Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. Sorry about yesterday. Things got a little bit hectic and I wasn't able to get to my computer. We're back with more spooks as usual. Tonight, we're reading 3 scary Uber stories. I know I haven't done Uber stories in quite some time, so I'm actually kind of happy to get back into these. So, have you had any weird stories in an Uber or Lyft? Comment down below. I'd love to hear them. With that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. The night was still young as I cruised the outskirts of Golden Gate Park. I waited patiently for a ping from the Uber app. I needed the extra cash as I was in danger of being short on my rent. The phone chimed, and as I looked to see someone in the outer sunset needing a ride, the picture was a blonde woman with a big smile, and I accepted. It said she had 2 passengers, and the pay was decent. I found a spot to make a U-turn and made my way to a small parking lot. I thought nothing of it at first. It seemed like a young couple who were about to have a night in the bay. It was curious, though. I could see the woman dragging a man with black hair towards the car. She dragged him by a thick leather leash attached to an even thicker collar. I had witnessed lots of things in this city, but even this was new to me. The car door opened and I asked, "Lisa?" "Yeah, that is me," she replied, as she sat in the back seat. I looked at the man who stood outside. He looked hesitant to get in the car. She tugged on the leash with impatience. "Get in here, Henry." "Is he okay?" "He's fine. My husband just seems a little out of it tonight," she replied. The man sat in the car slowly and seemed to just be staring into space. I know that it can be wise to wear layers when in the city, but the man was wearing a rather large hoodie that was much too thick for an August night, even for here. "So, we're going to the Tenderloin, right?" "Yes. If we could get there as quickly as possible, that would be great. I was having trouble with my car, and we can't be late." "Alright, well, let's get moving," I said, while I looked in the rearview mirror to make sure the 2 were buckled in. I noticed the man's collar was very tight around his neck. I could see the red marks on his skin. The dark brown leather was strange, as it had its own symbols embossed on it. I had never seen anything like it before. I didn't think much of it, though. I was more concerned by how tight it was, and how it looked like there may have been a struggle to put him in. The woman noticed that I was looking at it too. She frowned and asked, "So, are you gonna drive or not?" We hit the road and headed towards the destination. We drove in silence as I tried my best not to look back at the 2. I did notice that the man called Henry started to look puzzled as he stared out the window. "Is everything okay back there?" I inquired. "Everything's fine," Lisa remarked. "Where are you taking me?" Henry asked with a strange tone in his voice. It was monotone and sounded like he was half asleep. The woman scowled at him and tapped at his chest, signaling for him to be quiet. It was clear who was the dominant personality in the relationship, but I still found it quite odd. "You know where we're going, Henry. I told you several times." "You told me you were taking me to the temple." "No, I told you we were going to a party, Henry," Lisa replied as she looked frustrated. I looked back in the mirror to see the man had a look of worry in his eyes. I felt that something wasn't right with this woman. It seemed like the man was out of it. I started to think that he was on drugs. "What kind of party?" I asked, as I looked at the woman who frowned. She didn't like me asking any questions, and I could see it in her eyes. She was trying to think of what to say. "Like, is it a costume party?" "Does it matter?" "I'm just trying to make conversation, sorry." "I want to know what kind of party it is," Henry mumbled as he looked at me. The woman grabbed his leash and then tugged on it hard. I could hear as he struggled for air and coughed. It was aggressive and showed a flash of anger. The sight of it made me uncomfortable. "It's a sex party," she answered, while she loosened her grip on the leash. Henry coughed, then smiled a little bit. I curled my eyebrow as I looked at the two in the back. That's why he's wearing a collar, because he likes it. Whatever floats your boat, I'm not one to judge. An awkward silence fell in the car. I continued to drive to the location as Henry continued to keep his eyes locked on me in the mirror. He tugged on his collar and said, "She's lying to you because she is planning on killing me." Lisa tugged on the leash and growled, "Shut up, Henry. Stop joking around. It isn't funny, and you're going to freak the poor man out." "Are you in danger, dude?" "I am, because this woman is not my wife." "Don't listen to him. He likes to make people uncomfortable for his entertainment," Lisa said. "Then why don't you show him what's in your pocket?" "Listen, I don't want any trouble. I don't want to see what she has." "She has a weapon in her pocket," Henry said, as he lifted his hooded shirt to show a cut across his stomach that had already recently been stitched and burned shut. It explained why he was so out of it. The man had to be miserable with pain. "She used it on me earlier and put this collar on me." "Shut up!" Lisa yelled. "Oh Christ, dude. Do you need to go to the ER?" "I just want you to get me away from this woman and take this collar off," Henry pleaded. I started to hit the brakes, but then I felt something cold along my neck. I looked down to see the blade against my throat. "Keep driving, or I will have to kill you," Lisa growled, as I could feel it pressing against my skin. I lifted my foot off the brake and began to accelerate again. I could feel my hands tremble on the wheel. All right, just don't hurt me." "Then just keep driving, and you might live to see another day." "I have a thought," Henry grumbled. "Shut the hell up," Lisa yelled back. "Yeah, let's just do what she says." "How about you hit your brakes hard?" Henry replied as he looked out the window. "I don't see much traffic, so just trust me." "Don't listen to him." "If you want to live, I would do it now," Henry responded. I watched as he lunged at the woman and startled me enough that I slammed on the brakes. The knife fell into my lap, and I caught a glimpse of the weird, jagged blade. It had the same symbols as the collar. The car screeched to a halt, and I heard Henry shout, "Take the collar off, now!" "I'm begging you, don't listen to him," Lisa pleaded. As I turned awkwardly to see he had her pinned down, I reached in the back and realized it was my chance. I took the collar off from Henry and heard a growl that sounded like a wild animal. He smiled as he plunged his hands inside our captor's chest. The blood sprayed, hitting the interior and the windows. "That's much better," Henry remarked. I sat back in my seat, taking a glance at the mirror. Henry smiled back at me and exited the car. He walked around the window, tapping it lightly. I rolled it down in shock. "Thank you." I thought for a moment I was nearly done. "Henry, do you need me to call the police?" I asked nervously. "I don't go by that name anymore. You can call me the Legion." Okay," I responded. As I watched him reach into his pocket, I started to become nervous again. I thought I would die that night. He could see the fear in my face, to which he smiled back at me. "Are you going to kill me?" "No. I owe you. You saved my life," Henry answered. As he grabbed my hand and placed cash in it, I looked to see a few $100. "That should pay for the cleanup and a little more." "What the hell are you?" "I'm a demon that will end this world. But don't look so scared. At least I tipped." I'm nearly out of college now, about a week away from my graduation. My degree has lasted me about 4 years, and due to my father's death 2 years ago, I've paid for half out of my own pocket. Now, living in Detroit, jobs are a bit hard to come by. I was damn near dropping out to join the army just to be able to live before a buddy of mine recommended driving for Uber. I do it on weekends. You get an oddball every now and again, but it's decent cash, he said to me after a lecture one day. I already owned an electric car, an old 2009 Toyota Prius, so fuel wouldn't be a massive issue. Besides, I was and still am an extroverted person, so I love meeting new people. So I started driving. I enjoyed it for the most part. What my buddy had said was not too far off the truth, but shit, I'd be lying if I said I'd recommended it, especially if you live in Detroit. There have been times where I've been so scared I've had to get new seats, let alone new pants. But since I'm not about to end my short career driving for Uber, I figured I'd compile all the memorable moments I've had into a piece of writing. So, yeah, here you are. 1. I did a pickup once for a slightly older looking dude from a nightclub. He got into the back seat with a significantly younger woman, who seemed either really drunk or really high. I couldn't quite tell, but I could smell liquor and weed, so really, it could have been either, if not both. The guy on the other hand seemed pretty sober. Naturally, this sent a massive alarm clocks in my head, but I decided not to ask questions, and just drove them to where they wanted to go. Neither of them said anything for a while, and because it was so late at night, I wasn't really feeling a conversation either, so I didn't say much either. I kept looking back at this dude for a while though. Something about him just wasn't right. He was older than most of my clients, around 40 to 45 with slicked back dark gray hair and brown eyes. No facial hair either, save a small tuft on his chin. The most notable part was his teeth, whenever he smiled, which he was for the most of the trip. I got a glimpse in the rearview mirror. They were crooked to the point of looking jumbled, like they were just dropped into his mouth at any odd angle. Most of all though, they were sharp, like seriously sharp. They looked like they came out of some sort of carnivore, not a human. This really gave me the creeps. The worst part was yet to come. When we finally arrived at his destination, it wasn't a house. Well, it hadn't been a house for years. I'm sure you have all seen the photos of abandoned houses on abandoned streets in Detroit, and this house just looked just like that. Nevertheless, I pulled up to the curve. "Are you sure this is the right address, sir?" I asked, while checking my phone to make sure I had gotten it right. No response. "Sir?" I ask again, still looking down and no response. Finally, I look up in the mirror to see nothing. No one was in the back seat, not the girl or the man. I checked and the doors were still locked. I wouldn't normally, but when driving around certain areas, you need to lock the door. How the fuck would they have gotten out if the doors were still locked? Also, my hearing is in pretty good condition. I never even listened to loud music, so I would have heard them leave. Also, looking outside the windows, I didn't see anyone walking. It was a real job. I had been paid for the trip, so it's not like I had imagined the thing somehow. To this day, I still have no idea. 2. In Detroit, a lot of people go missing, adults and kids. It just so happens that I transported a man and who I thought was his son out into the middle of bumfuck nowhere, just for the dude to kill the kid and burnt the body. At least, that's what the police told me after rounds upon rounds of questioning. You see, after I had finished that trip, I called it a day and went to the local corner store on the way home to pick some things up. And lo and behold, who do I see on my milk carton other than the same fucking kid? I called the police and it went from there. They never found the guy, but have linked him to 3 other missing children in the area. This one still messes with me. 3. Here's one that more what the fuck than particular creepy. I picked up this guy once from a small little house a little ways out of downtown. He was tall, at least 6'4", and quite lanky too. I was in a good mood that day, so I tried to make a bit of conversation. I like talking with my passengers. As I said before, I enjoy meeting new people. Anyway, this guy says almost nothing. Like one-word responses to every single question. Eventually, we get to his destination, another small house about a 10-minute drive from the pickup point. He gets out, says goodbye, and everything seemed normal. I drive off and must have made it to around 30 miles per hour when I hear a knock on the windows. It's the same guy, running. He motions to pull over, in which I do. In a shock, I roll down the window to ask him what's up. "Sorry, I left my phone in the back seat." No context to the fact that he just ran faster than anyone ever. Initially, I thought my speed dial was fucked, but I had it checked and it was fine. 4. I always save the best, or in this case, worst, depending on how you look at it, to last. So, here's the one that keeps me up at night. I picked up this woman just outside of downtown around midnight. She hops in and starts to berate me, asking me why I took so long. Taken aback, I apologize. She immediately starts to break down and cry, sobbing, and just tells me to drive. The trip's a long one. Half an hour to the airport. Along the way, she starts to talk several times before just going back to crying. Eventually, she spits it out. "He's coming after me." That's all she said. I asked her if she needed me to call the police, but she said they wouldn't do anything for her. "He's gonna take me away with him," she blubbered out between quiet sobs. She went on to say other things, but they were inaudible mumbles. The last thing she said before I had to drop her off was, "The Nain Rouge, and he's getting close." Yeah, that was all the motivation it took for me to get her out and for me to speed off as fast as my shitty little Prius could go. The Nain Rouge, for those who don't know, is what I once believed to be another bullshit fairy tale about a little demon that roams the streets of Detroit, causing all the bad things to happen for the city and dragging people back to wherever he came from. Not being a superstitious person, I never believed in it. Now I do. Why? Because when I checked the news later that day, the woman I had picked up was found dead. Not too strange, but definitely creepy that they found her body. The part that got me was the fact that the police said she was dead for at least a month before they found her. I have a few more stories that I might tell tomorrow, but if you're from Detroit, or if you have any info on the Nain Rouge, I'd love to hear it. Because the last sighting of it was back in 1976, but I know it's still around. I've been an Uber driver for 8 years, and I retire tomorrow. If you made a list of the coolest jobs in the world, an Uber driver would not be in the top 10, or even the top 100. There are TV shows on doctors, lawyers, even firemen. Have you ever seen a TV show on an Uber driver? No. All we get are drunks throwing up on our seats and people who just can't seem to figure out how the app works. And we don't even get as many 5-star ratings anymore. Used to be that all you had to do was get there on time and keep your mouth shut. But now unless you have a whole convenience store on your seat backs, a 5-star rating is like seeing a Kardashian in a Costco. The job gets a bit tedious. For some, I'll admit, but some enjoy it. The writers especially say it gives them material to work with. If only they knew the things I've seen. I have piles of material, enough for a novel, maybe 2, a film deal too. Most of my best rides start at Finnegan Cemetery. It's a little off 5th and Granger, and it's big, and near the woods. I always get a little shiver of excitement every time I see the location listed there. Sometimes it's just an Iraq widow putting flowers on her husband's grave. Sometimes it's them. They don't look much like you see in the movies. At least the ones I've seen. The dead, I mean. Or the undead. I haven't quite figured it out. The first time it happened was nearly 5 years ago, on a cold September morning. I'd reached the cemetery, and a teenage girl had jumped in the back. Pale, lanky hair, ink pen tattoos all over her wrist. I thought she was a druggie, at first. With the way her eyes darted around, and the way she squirmed in her seat, they liked to hang around Finnegan's, especially with the woods close by. She wanted a ride to Williams High. "That's where my daughter went," I said, smiling. "I haven't been there in years now." She looked up, and I wondered where I'd seen her before. She was so familiar. "Did she leave a long time ago?" Her voice was low, cold even. Not snappy or rude like most teenagers, but cold and empty. I think that's what tipped me off. If it wasn't for the voice, I'd never have looked her up. "Graduated 3 years ago. She's in college in California. She hated Williams, though. Didn't get along with the rich kids. The girl smiled at first. Neither did I, especially the ones with the big cars. She didn't say anything else after that, but when she got out and closed the door, she turned to look at me one last time. Do you like driving from Finnegan's cemetery? She asked. At the time, I thought it was an odd question. Did it make any difference? I shrugged. Sure. I'll be seeing you around then. My name is Abby. I forgot about it right after, and had back-to-back rides the whole morning. Over lunch, though, I remembered her and Googled Abby in Williams High. Williams student killed in tragic hit and run. The headline read, Family devastated at the death of Abby West. Underneath was a picture of Abby, a little younger, her hair in a ponytail. I recoiled in shock. Now I remembered. The accident had terrified my wife, and she'd insisted our daughter be dropped off at the school every day for a month. My daughter had been livid, but we'd been more worried about her ending up like Abby. But how exactly had Abby ended up? Whatever it was from that day, the rides from Finnegan's became a lot more frequent. It was as though they'd chosen me. I saw Abby again a few times, and mostly I had new customers. Some of them just wanted to go home. Some of them wanted a good time. Most of them were dead quiet, pardon the pun, but some liked to talk, and those were the ones I liked best. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't want to scare them away, but I just listened, and that gave me a lot of stories to tell. There was a couple who died within 2 years of each other, after having been together 65 years. High school sweethearts who'd stuck through Korea and arthritis and 4 children. They'd been as moony as teenagers in love, holding hands and smiling at each other, and requesting golden oldies on the stereo. I dropped them at Pickens Park where they'd met, and they went off towards a picnic bench hand in hand. There was the mom and her son, who'd visited the zoo to see the tigers, like he'd always wanted. There was the teenager who just wanted to drive around listening to Nirvana. He'd told me about his cover band and how they'd played at the school dance where he'd kissed his crush. He gave me the little black wristband on his arm when he left. I hung it around my rearview mirror. There was a whole lot of happy, and that filled my heart. But there was also a lot of sad, and it was the sad that stuck. Most days were okay, but sometimes it got a bit too much. Some days, I spent half an hour with my head on the steering wheel in the garage, not quite ready to go inside. There was a man in the business suit who died in a plane crash and just wanted to see his son. He'd paid me double to idle the car beside the field where a little red-haired boy was playing Little League. There was the woman in the hospital gown, tired and drawn, who'd asked to be driven to her house in the suburbs. It had been empty, but she'd broken down in tears when she saw the minivan outside, the little baby on board sticker half scratched off. There was the boy with the old-fashioned haircut and the rope burns around his neck, who'd wept silently when the pride parade we passed hoisted a big rainbow flag. I'd been an Uber driver for 8 years, and I retire tomorrow. I've seen some interesting things, and I love my job. But I'm pushing 65, and my eyes are getting weak. There's going to be a job open when I leave. Would you be interested? Thanks for listening, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your own story, the links for my email and subreddit will be down below. I've also created a Discord, so if you want to join that, the link will be in the description down below as well. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And with that said, have beautiful nightmares, and I will see you next time.